Hello and welcome to this week's Liverpool.com podcast. I am Dan Morgan. I am joined by Liverpool.com's Oliver Connolly and Mark Wakefield. Gents, hope you're well. Liverpool, after a week in which they've won a Premier League game, and we were all able to, for once, not be apocalyptic on a Sunday night about the concept of the world caving in. We are currently in the midst of a week in which Liverpool host Chelsea on Thursday. After winning at Sheffield United. And I guess I just want to sort of start by catching the mood a little bit, Ollie, and just seeing sort of where you're at after that. We've had sort of these false dawns before with West Ham and Tottenham, and it just feels like any win now is something to cling to for a little bit at least. But yeah, just in terms of the mood of yourself after this week, how have you been?
Yeah, it was a good win. They played well. I thought the tactical setup was brilliant, and they could have won by 4, 5, 6. So of course, you have to caveat everything with that. The team really stinks. Sheffield United, they're really bad, and they turned around the centre-back partnership 3 or 4 times and could have had something. So that there's one of those where there's really promising signs. This kind of new flexible 2-3-5, 3-5-2, a bit of something different, which is really exciting. The performance of Curtis Jones, exciting. Thiago, excellent. And then you have the concern still, which is the lack of the press, the Kabak situation, who's been up and down early on. So to me, it's much of the same. It does remind me similarly to the West Ham games where there were so many positive signs coming out of that West Ham game. Similar stuff, tactical setup, Curtis Jones. And yet there were those concerns that immediately just sprang back to life. So it's definitely a wait-and-see situation heading into this final run.
Yeah, it's another a big test on the back of a win, Mark. This is a massive game in terms of, I almost pit it alongside what happened against Man City, in that you sort of get the feeling with Chelsea, because of the squad depth, because of the depth of quality they've got, that it's one of those where if you're not on it, or even if you have a bad 15 minutes like Liverpool has against City, the wheel can come off quite dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea are a completely different animal now, aren't they, with Thomas Tuchel? It completely transformed them to the team that they were under Frank Lampard. They're much more defensively solid. They've made them hard to beat, hard to concede. They don't concede many chances. They've gone to 3 at the back with Christensen, Rudiger, and Azpilicueta. So they're a much defensively solid team, and that's not what you want to hear for a team coming to Anfield, where Liverpool are struggling not just to win games but to score goals. Confidence is really low on the home patch, and the history of the fixture of Liverpool versus Chelsea is obviously on Liverpool's side in recent years, but like I say, the recent form is just not there at the moment. Something's got to spring them back to life. We've been saying it for the last few months. Manchester United at home, that's got to get them back. Man City at home, that's going to get them back. Merseyside derby, they've all been games that we've been thinking, this is the perfect time for Liverpool to get back into a rhythm, get the momentum back, and it's just not happened. And it, like Ollie said there, it was a good win against Sheffield United, but it is just a wait and see moment at this point, because while it was a solid win, like you said, if Sheffield United had put their chances away, that's a different result altogether. Yes, it was a welcome clean sheet, but it wasn't a comfortable clean sheet, not giving the defence many moments of peace, because I think there was a header from McBurney in the game where it should have been buried easily. Any top quality striker buries that. If that's Olivier Giroud, that's in the back of the net, no question. So it's certainly going to be a tough test to deal with Chelsea defence and their attack. Timo Werner's not been playing as a striker very much, but he'll want to prove a point, because obviously last summer he was linked with Liverpool. He'll want to prove a point at Anfield, albeit there's no fans there, but it's certainly going to be a tough ask to deal with this new Chelsea under Thomas Tuchel, that's for sure.
What is it with new Chelsea managers? Just basically deciding Marcus Alonso's the way forward, by the way.
The thing with Tuchel,
every manager.
Tuchel is a madman. This cannot be understated in any sense of the word. This man is beyond football obsessive. You think Pep Guardiola is football obsessive, Thomas Tuchel takes it to the next degree. And he does not believe in your weird definitions of formations and systems and tactics. That has no role in his life. He could roll up with 9 different formations and he spaces them out 8 minutes apart. Yeah. And that's how he runs. So there's no idea what he's going to do here. And I think that it's a scary and interesting proposition, because you don't know whether he's going to try and pin up against what Liverpool ran the other night, whether he's going to try and map out something for how Liverpool have traditionally played with a 4-3-3, whether it's playing on the counter-attack or playing more possession-heavy. And it kind of gives you two different angles. Could it be like when Chelsea rolled up last year and Liverpool just ripped them apart because Chelsea is so wide open and they ask N'Golo Kante to, say, cover the whole middle of the pitch, which Tuchel has done also in games where he thinks he can get away with it? Or do they come and play a bit more sedated and try and hit on the counter-attack? So it's probably the most wide open in terms of what it could look like game they've had all season, because Lord knows what Tuchel's going to roll up with a plan of.
I think he is the archetypal sort of 3-year manager, in that he asks for, he's so intense, he asks for so much. He'll drag a substitute off if he isn't doing to the minuscule detail what he's asked him to. That by the end of 3 years with him, everyone's just like, get this guy away from me. He's really doing me head in. He's an intense guy, isn't he? I get a little bit uncomfortable seeing him sometimes on screen. I'm a little bit like, oh, I wouldn't fancy working for you. I don't know what it is. So yeah, that is not the nature of this particular podcast, to talk about Chelsea and to talk about Sheffield United. What we've decided to do, an idea spawned by Ollie, I should say, this morning, is returning to the concept of power rankings. But what we want to do is rank Liverpool's 5 most important players for this season to come. So who is the most important player for Liverpool for the rest of the campaign, and what 5 of them are they? So what I have decided is that the guys are going to basically present their 5 to me, and I will act as judge, jury and executioner on 5 to 1. Now 5 to 1 is in order of sort of least most important to most important, if you like. And I think that it's only fair that I then get to rule the roost. And if I want to overrule them with someone completely different, I will, because I'm the content editor. And that is the perks of the job, even though there aren't many. So we'll start at number 5. Mark, give me your 5th most important player of Liverpool's season for the rest of it.
Well, judging by, we've obviously talked outside this podcast very briefly about our options, and I think Ollie's are a bit more, straightforward than what I've gone for. I've tried to go for players that a bit more outside the box, but I mean, number 5 you might think is not outside the box as much, but I've gone for Trent Alexander-Arnold because, the last couple of years he has been arguably one of the main sources of assists for Liverpool, or the most important form of assists this season, last few seasons. This season he's not been at it very much. There's several reasons for that. You could not go into it too much because we'll be here all day, but if Liverpool are going to get into the top 4, which is the main priority this season, they've got to try and get him back to his best. In the last few weeks there have been signs. Certainly Sheffield United had a very good game, and then several other games as well. He's been close to his best, but still not quite there just yet. But yeah, for me, they've got to try and get certainly a lot more out of him, whether it's getting more goals. Obviously, he got the goal against Tottenham, but his free kicks haven't been quite there this season as what they have been used to. But in terms of his assist output, him and Andy Robertson aren't quite there either. But certainly from an attacking point of view, which has been the main source of problems the last few weeks and months, they've got to get Trent back into the game.
Do you think that there originally was a plan to evolve with Trent? Do you think that there was sort of Trent's next stage was set and it's already sort of had to be put back to 2021-22, in the sense that, I think everyone has parked the midfield discussion for now, but part of the reason why they've done that is because he was essentially Liverpool's ultimate playmaker from a sort of central to right position anyway. We talked about this last week on the show with how they use Thiago and where they use Trent in a conventional sense. In an ideal world, when Liverpool was still were on course to get a 90-point season, the idea that a breakdown in play and a sort of turnover in play would lead to Trent one side, Thiago the other, with you'd imagine around 20 yards of space inside the opposition box while you've still got numbers forward. The opposition half, I should say, while you've still got numbers forward, is a really dangerous position. So I guess what I'm saying is, do we have to just wait until next season to see sort of Trent 4.0, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I completely get the Trent in midfield discussion. He's been liking Steven Gerrard with his passing range. Some of the balls he can play is absolutely out of this world. But for me, certainly the last year and a half or so, he's been a lot more defensively solid. I think that's always the criticism you see it on Twitter all the time. Can he defend? Can he do this? Can he do that? Gets compared to Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Reece James, who are very good right backs as well. But defensively, he has been much more solid this year. I think his positioning has been much better. Whether that's because he's been dropping 10 yards deeper because there's no Van Dijk or Gomez back there. They're the tactical reasons why. But his tackling seems to become a lot better. His defensive nous is just so much wiser. It's just becoming a much more complete all-round right back, which is obviously what he is, what makes him the best in the world in his position. Whether we'll see him move into midfield next year after, who knows? But for now, I'm more than happy to see him at right back because that's the position that he has made his own. He's defined it as that's the way the right back has to play now. He's defined that. Most players across the world now see him as the benchmark, and I'm certainly comfortable with him staying there. Certainly for the time being. Why not for the future?
What's interesting about the discussion is last year, I think he almost gets put into the wrong category anyway, as is we had the long piece recently about positionless football and the fact that we keep giving these guys numbers and positions. He was a right back, but he played in the inside right channel. I wrote a long piece about him and I called it the pocket. He sets up in the inside right pocket and he tries to bend and arc crosses. That's what he likes to do. And he was always closest to David Beckham than he was Cafu or any other right back that would roll forward. What they changed against Sheffield United when he played essentially an inverted wing-back role and everyone was saying, it's similar to João Cancelo. He's always been there in that space because he was always asked to cut off transitions to try and head it off before he would even have to bother being at the back. What they did this time was say, do you want to carry the ball a bit more? Do you want to maybe place him into play passing and then play through the middle? Because usually if you think about it, he would either slide the ball off and then move out towards the wing to give some width, or he would set up in that pocket and immediately try and get the ball in. And that's where you get the 45, 50 cross numbers that were just impossible to sustain. He wanted to play his style of game, and it didn't work with the way the forward line was playing anymore, or the way defenders were setting up against them. So now this is the evolution, I think, where they would probably prefer him to keep that first role for at least another 3 or 4 years whilst the legs are there, and then maybe you just naturally gravitate into being more of a midfielder as you age a little bit. But the little evolution now is, will he carry the ball more? Can he be more of an on-the-move playmaker? And then do you have the guys behind, if we don't have Jordan Henderson, to cover that? And that's a big ask of Wijnaldum and Thiago to say, you must sit there the whole game. And it's, do you want the trade-off of who is going to be your on-the-move creator? Is it Trent in the final third and he's going to get all the way back to right back? Or are you going to allow Thiago or Wijnaldum, one of them, to move? And initially they let Wijnaldum and Thiago have that role. And against Sheffield United, they said, you guys sit, Trent's going to go. And I thought it worked just so much better. It brought so much more natural depth to the attacking play. And he seemed happier. He seemed free.
Yeah, he did. He did, indeed. Okay, Ollie, give me your number 5.
I've got Fabinho. You could put him, I think, 1. You could put him 5. You could leave him off the list, I guess. I think that, to me, the interesting thing is more the question of where he plays. I know Mark's written about that this week of, do you just decide, you know what, let's sit him as the screener in midfield and we'll cobble together a centre-back partnership from real centre-backs, or are we just treating him moving forward as a centre-back? I think that's a fascinating discussion the rest of the way. And could you maybe do some of the Thomas Tuchel way, say, well, let's just stream it week to week. Let's decide as and when, based on the opposition, where we think we need our best ball stopper in the team.
I've got to be honest, I don't know how it's even a conversation, to be honest. I don't know why it's a discussion. He is number 1 centre-back at the club for the rest of the season. And if he's not, there should be serious questions asked. I don't think it's feasible. I don't think it's feasible at all to ask Ozan, Kabak and anyone else to play centre-half for Liverpool. Nat Phillips is 24, but he's at most probably a top-level championship player, if we're being honest. Ben Davies clearly needs time to get used to what they want him to get used to. And, I think the intricacies of what we ask players to do in this system, we've spoken for years about how hard and how sort of chess-like this system is. You don't just have to play a position, you have to anticipate 3 moves before they happen. And I think to have a 20-year-old kid there who might not even have a future at Liverpool, he's on loan, I think he needs his hand holding as much as possible. And I think that's why we haven't seen apart from when it's been necessary. For instance, we didn't see Kabak and Phillips in the derby. And I think that's the reason why. I think there's a part of me that thinks that by having the hand forced against Sheffield United, they actually came up with something more creative, to be honest, and more screening and more protective for the centre-backs in the long run, in by which they were able to just keep the foot on the throat, and they were able to stop Sheffield United from getting out at all, from letting them do McBurney things, and from causing problems in that way. But I struggle, Ollie, and I that's where I think potentially I think he could be higher in the list of priorities, because I think you have to keep him fit, and I think there's no doubt he plays centre-back for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think the only counter would be, how comfortable are you with Gini Wijnaldum in that sixth role? And are you? It's whether they say we are playing. Basically, they played a double pivot the other night, right? There was the two of them screening in front. Is that just the mode moving forward? Is there still going to be a one in there? And if it's a one, do you trust Gini Wijnaldum? Because Wijnaldum has been excellent in that role in spurts, particularly against West Ham, and then pretty dreadful at overplaying the ball in other ones. And I guess the conversation you have as a staff is the drop off from Fabinho to Wijnaldum great, and the drop off from Fabinho to Phillips, Kabak, and does moving Fabinho with that drop off into the screening role help cover that somewhat? I guess that would be your week to week role, and then whether it would just look like a back three anyway if he's in that role in front. If he just drops in, is it just a back three anyway in certain weeks?
I think the devil's advocate is, put yourself in their shoes when they're sort of playing the odds constantly. You imagine, so you play a hypothetical here. Imagine he got injured playing in the screening role, in the midfield role, and was ruled out for the season. I think that's a lot harder to take than if he gets injured playing centre back, because I think they would think, okay, it could have happened anyway. But if he gets an impact injury off a bad tackle, a la Napoli at home, because he's in that midfield area, they would think, what are we doing putting him in there? Why didn't we just sort of make him number one centre half? I think it's difficult. I get the screening argument, but for me, I think there's no doubt. Put it this way, in my opinion, if he went down for the rest of the season, then I think there's every chance that Gini Wijnaldum ends up playing centre half.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you can get Naby Keita back, probably would happen, or Henderson. Or obviously Henderson is the centre back, but if Henderson's out, if Fabinho's out, and you get Keita back, I think you end up with Wijnaldum and Kabak if he's fit. So that's where I am with that. Number fours, Ollie, I'll come to you again. Give you a thought.
Yeah, just Alisson for me. Obviously, we don't know his status at the moment, how likely and liable he is to play the rest of the season. That's obviously out there. And I must confess, I think on this podcast, it must be a month ago now, I did state that he was now streaks ahead of every other goalkeeper in the world and had actually gone beyond Oblak into his own stratosphere. And since then, he fell into a hole and is being borderline, just worrying. That's what we'll say.
Yeah.
Given the defensive issues, you need him to play at a level that is even beyond his own excellence, as we've discussed before, becoming a guy who is not just a shot stopper, but stops really good chances. So he becomes an elite level goalkeeper. The only way you're going to win games consistently the rest of this way, with the way the forward line's been playing and the way the defense has been playing, is feeling comfortable when you score 2 goals. And that requires him being at an elite level. Okay,
Mark, number 4.
Well, I've gone for Naby Keita. Just again, another outside the box option. I think.
Look forward to the YouTube comment here, mate. I don't think it's a coincidence that the minute or the game he went down, which was I think the last game, but prior to his injury, the last game he played was the Crystal Palace 7-0 in December. I don't think it's any bit of a coincidence that from that game Liverpool struggled in an attacking, creative sense. No, I mean, if we go back to the start of the season, I think he had a run of 5 or 6 games in a row. There's the Arsenal game at home, there's a Chelsea game in there where, creatively at least, Liverpool were streets ahead of pretty much every team in the league at that point. And, obviously a lot's happened between now and then. But, if Liverpool want to try and get into that top 4, they've got to, outsmart opposition defences, which has not been something they've been able to do the last few weeks. It's been too easy to play against Liverpool, especially at Anfield. It's just, like you say, sit deep, do the low block, counter-attack. That's literally what opposition teams have been doing in the last few weeks, barring Manchester City, who've just
a streets ahead of everybody at the moment. If you have Keita in there, that frees up some. Like you can have Wijnaldum and Thiago in there to, do the hard yards, do the tackling, to screen the defense, protect likes of Phillips, Kabak, whoever it is back there, or Fabinho, obviously, if he comes back into that position, and then that allows. You could see it against Sheffield United. He was only on the pitch for 10, 15 minutes. You could see some of the passes he was making. He was making runs forward. He has that little sprint that he does just to get away from opposition defenders. All of a sudden, he's away. There's no other midfielder. I mean, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain can do it, but he's not been selected for one reason or over the last few weeks for whatever reason. But Keita is the one player in midfield anyway that can add that spark, who can set the front three away. And if they are going to score more goals, to beat these teams that are proven to be, their Achilles heel at home, they need him fit. They need him back at his best.
Do you think he plays against Chelsea, Mark?
If he's fit, I'd start him. But it's again, who do you leave out? Against Sheffield United, you can't drop Curtis Jones. It's honestly one of the first choice midfielders at the moment, and then you're left with Thiago and Wijnaldum. What do you do? No, it's a very, very tricky one. They're spoiled for options in midfield if they're all fit, but I don't think he'll start him. I'd like to see him start from a personal point of view, but I don't think he will.
All right, give us number 3. Mark?
I've gone for Diogo Jota. Personally, he's one of my favourite players right now. I love him to bits. Start ever since the minute he come to this club. You can just see he just gets it. There's not many players who come into this Liverpool team and just start almost perfectly right from the off. Even look at some of the best ones. Robertson. He took a while to get in. Fabinho took a while to settle. There's a couple of the exceptions. Salah, Mane, but Jota basically come into a title-winning team, a Champions League winning team, and just look right at home. And since he's gone down injured in December, a bit like Naby Keita, the goals have dried up, and it's not so much the quality that you miss; it's the variety of options. Klopp's been forced to basically play Mane, Salah, and Firmino pretty much every game, and if he hasn't, he's dropped Shaqiri in there, and that's not worked on time. Koeman and Mino didn't get a game much until he went out on loan, so it just adds that something different. And like I said, it was on course for basically getting 20, 25 goals this season prior to his injury. He's one of the best attackers in the league at that point when he went down. So they need to get him back. Whether he comes in against Chelsea, obviously, I think from what Klopp said in his press conference, they're still assessing him to see if he's okay. He's not had much training the last couple of days, but if they can get him back into the team, back into the squad, it's a massive boost.
Okay, Ollie, number 3.
I've gone with Thiago Alcantara, not only for his delightful social media antics, which are a mood boost during these troublesome times.
Meme gold.
No. I'm a confessed Thiago-aholic. Every time I'm on the show, it's a 20-minute spiel about Thiago's excellence with and without the ball. To me, this is a leadership thing, even more so than it is his excellence with the ball, which we don't have to get into that ludicrous debate of whether he hurts or helps this team. The guy ran the show in the Champions League final 8 months ago. I think he's okay. You go back to that first goal I told you guys about this morning. I went back and rewatched the game yesterday, and you rewatch the celebration for the first goal, and he screams at Ozan Kabak to get involved in the celebration, to be a part of the team. This guy is maniacal. He wants to win away at Sheffield United the same way he wanted to win in that Champions League final. It matters that much to him. This idea that he came as like this prima donna, slippy, assy guy was never the player. People outed themselves as who never watched him in the Bundesliga. He likes to fight. He likes to be in the battle. That's why he was playing in the German League and not swanning around, sitting in a double pivot for Juventus, spraying passes all over the place. He wants to be in that tussle and fight. And I think those leadership skills, once Jordan Henderson's gone down and now he's kind of grown into the club and taken stock of the thing, the fact that it's bottomed out has made it a little bit easier for him. He can now kind of assume this mantle of not feeling like he's separate from the team and coming into this title-winning team. And it's like, what is my place? Now he just is a part of the team and they're all dragging themselves out of it together. So I think him the rest of the way with that reputation, with that quality, and needing those leadership skills in the middle of the pitch, he's going to just be so instrumental.
I love it. Okay. Let's roll on to number 2. Ollie, give me your number 2.
I got with Sadio Mane. I think the biggest drop off in the forward line this year, just in terms of production, you can go through everyone else, as I have basically done this week throughout the site. We did a Firmino one, I did a Mane one, we had a Salah one up this morning. And you go and find their underlying numbers, and you see Roberto Firmino is basically as bad at what he does as he has been the whole time. as Liverpool fans and Liverpool, the team, have come to accept, he probably plays 3 goals below his expected output. That's just who he is, and we've come to learn and live with it, and you understand his movement, all the stuff we all know, you just deal with it. Sadio Mane is playing at the similar level, and Liverpool right now have the 2 worst finishers in the Premier League. And you can have one, you cannot have 2. And the second one cannot be the guy who last season was the most common player in the Premier League to take you from a point to 3 points. He was the MVP in that respect, that he scored more match-winning goals and more point-winning goals than any other player in the Premier League. And that has been such a big drop off this year. And I think it's gone a little bit under the radar as everything else has bubbled to the surface, the centre-back situation, the injury crisis, VAR, everything else. Firmino has taken a ton of the blame for what's gone wrong this season. And what has gone a little under the radar there, that even with the same opportunity, even with the same average distance of shot, and every nerdy metric you want to go to, Sadio Mane does not hit the target as consistently, and he's not scoring as consistently. And so for them to get back into a top 4 race and to finish in the top 4, they need Sadio Mane, not even to be traditional Sadio Mane, just do what the expected output is. And that is more than enough and far more than they've had so far this year.
It's the first time to me that he's looked like it's sort of taken a toll on him, in the sense that I think one thing that hasn't been said, written, discussed is how much he is taking for the team. Like, he is getting booted, he's getting triple marked, he's not getting a chance to get his head up at times, and he's constantly asking still for the ball. He's constantly showing, he's constantly saying, give me the ball and I'll try and make something happen. And I wonder whether there's a bit of man management to do there with him, and sort of, and maybe this is the plan with the sort of Sheffield United tactic, if you like, if it continues, is to, this is something which can get Sadio a bit more freedom, a bit more movement, a bit of way in which he can sort of score that. You think about what a typical Mane goal has become at Liverpool. It's that sort of Southampton away last season, Newcastle at home, just open up and around 16 yards out on his right foot, and it's almost like it's an XG of a goal, an XG of like 9.9%. You know, it's as close as you're going to get, but he makes them look that easy, and that's why. And I think teams have got wise to that, and I think teams have got wise to allowing that space, and it's up to Liverpool now, I think, because he's done so much for the team, and he continues to do so much for the team, that for the first time, I think there's a need of, it always feels like it's Salah or Firmino, doesn't it? Or they need a goal. You know, they need a goal. They need this little confidence booster of a goal. I think for the first time, you're starting to see that with Mane.
He's also the first one for me where, when there was the talk of burnout earlier in the year, everyone immediately went to Trent. Trent looks exhausted. Trent looks burnt out. I wrote that piece recently about the naivety of the footballers under Jurgen Klopp, and it was a quote that came from Matt Hummels that he felt Jurgen Klopp needed naive footballers that he could mould in this one specific way. And as they got older and as they found their voice and they became winners in other things, those lads went off and won a World Cup. That it wasn't quite the same. That thing where you've got to go and press, and Linda's is shouting at you, press. You don't really want to do those 5 yards because you did those 5 yards 2 years ago and you're really tired. When I was writing that, the first person that came to mind was Mane, because I do think there's been that slight dip of real burning intensity and urgency, and completely understandable. The guy's played football non-stop, international as well as domestic football, for what is it now, 3 straight calendar years, probably 4 or 5, right? It's been an unbelievable toll on him, and I think you can really see it in him, that there's that definite flinch of, and it's not that they don't go and do it. No one wants to say they don't do this stuff. It's the hesitation. It's the, I'll take an extra second, an extra beat to go and press it. Their pressing numbers are way down. And he was so much the conduit for their high press of leaping out at a terrifying pace. That was always the thing. It wasn't just the press came high. It was that it came terrifyingly fast, and they could do it for 80 minutes and you could only last for 40. And that's where they really need to. And if it's a case of, as Mark mentioned, Jota earlier, if it's a case of getting Jota back in for a fortnight just to give him a breather, maybe that's what it takes. Okay,
Mark, number 2, please.
I get the feeling my choice is going to cause much of a stir, but I've gone for Ozan. I've gone for Ozan Kabak. I'm thinking big picture with this one, mainly because I've wrote a piece on the site. He has got basically a 3-month audition to basically be a Liverpool player, and from a Liverpool point of view, they've got to look past Van Dijk and go and Matip at some stage. Whether the next season is Matip's last season, it definitely won't be Van Dijk's, but they've got to look past who's going to be the next big centre back at the club. And but pressure brings out the best in players. That's the best players thrive under pressure, and there's no doubt that he is at this moment. He's 20 years of age. This is going to be the hardest challenge arguably he's going to face in his professional career. And if he can get through it, the signs are, like you say, he's been a bit inconsistent, but he's 20 years old and he's playing at centre back in arguably the toughest situation you can ever really get. So we've got to cut him some slack, and he's only just been at the club for a month as well. We've got to remember as well. So and if you factor in the importance of this season, we can't underestimate how important it is to have a recognised centre back playing at centre back. It's absolutely vital. As good as Henderson has been, as good as Fabinho is, they aren't centre backs. Fabinho has played almost as good as, but you can just see a couple of times, he just does things where it's a tackle that he shouldn't do. Like, he can get away with in midfield, but he can't do it as centre back. And Kabak, like you say, he's not been perfect by any stretch, but there are signs there. He can pass the ball. He's comfortable on it. His heading's quite good as well, considering he's not obviously the tallest of defenders. But he's got. They paid $1.5 million for a loan, and then potentially they've got to pay £80 million or something. They're not going to spend that lightly. Given the current financial climate, especially on a player that if they think may or may not make it, if they're going to spend that money, they're going to spend it on a player they know full well is going to be the answer to whatever issues they've got coming next season. You'd hope that Van Dijk and Gomez are fit, so they've got to think whatever centre back they do or do not get in, they've got to be. If one of them goes down again, they've got to be able to step in and say, right, Virgil's not there, go in and fill in the void for a week or two, whatever it is. If Kabak can be that player, which the next 3 months, it's going to be tough for the club as well, because it's not easy to assess a player in such a short space of time, especially given the crazy hectic season that we're suffering right now. It's not easy to assess a player. Like, a mistake at this time, it's not a normal season. So it's going to be tough for the club to assess him in such a short space of time. But if he can get through it, who knows? He might be a Liverpool player in the long run. The sign's good, but like I say, it's just a start right now.
Okay, number one, please.
For me,
I've gone for
I go Salah. Salah.
Mo Salah is my number one.
I guess he's yours too, Ollie.
Mo Salah is mine too. Yeah.
Let's open the floor on Mo Salah. Go on.
To me,
yeah. I mean,
sorry,
you go
go
first,
on.
Ollie, it's fine.
No, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, to me, I mean, amid all the the problems that Liverpool supposedly had in front of goal, creativity, not scoring many goals. He scored 24, 25 goals in all competitions this season. That's crazy numbers for for any player, let alone one who's been doing it for consistently year in, year out since he's been at Liverpool. He's got 119 goals, 118 goals in all competitions since arriving at Liverpool. He is a living legend right now. And whilst like we've talked, Mane's not been at it in terms of front of goal. Firmino hasn't been at it, but the one constant has been Salah. And I think if they are going to achieve, we're not expected to win the Champions League by any stretch, but if they are going to go deep in that competition, and if they're going to compete for a top 4 spot, he has to continue banging in the goals. It's as simple as that.
Go on, Ollie.
Yeah, that's just it. He is by far, to me, the most important player the rest of the way. You win games, Dan, you might not know this, by scoring goals. We can do all the nerdy tactical analysis, but you got to put the ball in the net. And he has the 5th fattest mark in the league this year of guys above their expected goals. So he's scoring all the goals that are expected and then adding the ones that are unexpected too. And there's no one else in Liverpool even close to that stratosphere of outperforming what is expected of them. His average shot distance has gone up and up and up as the team gets worse and worse and worse, and he keeps scoring goals. It's just the guy cannot stop scoring goals. And expect him to continue to deliver that is a massive ask. And yet, do you have any doubt that he's going to end the season with the Golden Boot? I have zero doubt in my mind. If anything, it should open up for him a little bit if they can round into some kind of form. So to have a guy that you can just say, no matter what, is going to end the season with the Golden Boot, which I think is just that will likely be the difference between them finishing the top 4 or not.
Do you think that there's perhaps an element that so we think of strikers and Liverpool goal scorers as heroes, as men of the hour, as people who do all the Roy of the Rover stuff. And there's always this chat about Salah, whether he's underappreciated or undervalued. And do you wonder, is it because he doesn't, I mean, it's a ludicrous statement, but because he does, but he doesn't obviously win games on his own. And this team is so built about the team. It's so built about it's all of them that we don't get to see him be this Suarez, Torres incumbent that almost Liverpool fans have become used to from someone winning a Golden Boot, for example. Do you think he suffers a little bit from that?
Yeah, he's a victim of the team being so good in his time. If the team stunk and he was this good, which he would be another hero. It would be Suarez all over again, but we wouldn't have parades.
If it was him and Gerrard in like 2008, you'd be saying like these two guys are just holding us up by our coattails here.
It's really interesting. I had that piece this morning on his shot locations this season and where his goals have come from. And it's fascinating because in over the last couple of years, he's been the world's best finishing forward. And he essentially finishes unbelievable team moves. And you go through all the great Klopp goals and they get 10,000 retweets. And who's at the end of them nodding at the back post? It's Mohamed Salah. And it's an amazing sweeping team move. And Salah just the guy who puts in the net. This year, he's far more individualistic. Any idea that he was selfish before was daft. He was scoring a ton of goals. He had a ton of assists. It's like, what do you want him to do? He puts the ball in the net more than anyone else. Great. Be selfish then. And he wasn't anyway. But this season, he's selfish in so much as all of his goals are coming in the same locations for the most part, except for the screamers. It's in his little Salah corridor, him fashioning it for himself, or the quick reaction stuff we've spoken about this season where it just lands, he hits it and it goes in. So he's had to develop more of an individual style this year, and yet it still doesn't seem like that kind of talismanic aura has surrounded him at all. It's still, and I think a lot of it is just Klopp is the talisman. So for this team, it's about the collective. It's about Klopp, and he's just kind of been unfortunate the era he's come through. Fortunate for himself, a ton of trophies. But in terms of that kind of aura and being up there with Dalglish, Gerrard, and being kind of like, will there be a stand named after him? Will he get the statue first? It's going to be the Jurgen Klopp stand. It's going to be the Jurgen Klopp statue. That's just the times we're in.
Okay, I'll quickly sum up where we have the standings, the final placings, and what I've judged to be the correct top 5 players, most important for the rest of Liverpool's season. Number 5, I'm gonna agree with you, Mark, on Kabak, in that I'd say that a centre-back just doing centre-back things for Liverpool is massively important for the next 3 months. And if he can just nail those basics, not get himself into any deep trouble and get a bit of consistency around partners and performances and stuff, then I think, he'll well be worth the loan fee, put it that way, even if he doesn't stay beyond the season. If he can get Liverpool to that top 4, holy grail, then I think that him just doing 7 out of 10 stuff week in, week out at centre-half is going to be massive. Ollie, I'm going to put Fabinho in a 4. For all the reasons we mentioned. I think he will be Liverpool's number 1 centre-back for the season, but also he will be able to screen games and to also use his nous to impact the position ahead of him, which we've seen even if he's not playing there. So he's massively important, and I think he's really important in the context of he isn't someone who has naturally stayed fit. And I think it's now time for Liverpool to try and get him on the pitch, get him through, not to go too much into sort of abusing players' bodies, but back to the old 90s days of just strap up, get an injection if you have to before the game. We need you to pull through here for a couple of months. This is just how it is, kind of thing. Third, Thiago. I think he is massively important no matter what. And I think sort of Thiago becoming Thiago is a huge contextualized part of the rest of the season. Yeah, it's about the team. Yeah, it's about getting top 4. Yeah, it's about doing as much as we can in the Champions League. But almost Thiago finding his home from now until May will really, I think, lay the foundations for next season with what they can do when they've got everyone fit. Sadio Mane, number 2, for all the reasons we mentioned, hugely important, hugely underplayed in terms of his impact on the attacking dynamics of the team. And yes, Mohamed Salah is Liverpool's most important player from now until the end of the season. That has been Liverpool's.com's podcast this week. Hope you've enjoyed it. Check out the website. We've got tons of features on there which are really good and are really insightful. The guys have been working extremely hard on, and we will continue to build up to Chelsea tomorrow, the weekend, so on and so forth and beyond. But yeah, do leave us some nice comments, especially to Mark after a couple of his choices there. But for now, yeah, be nice, everyone. Come on. Okay, we'll leave it there. We'll see you all again next week. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Up these Reds.